Hi, we're from Pomona High School, and today we will be doing our last poem discussion on A Valediction Forbidding Mourning by John Donne. We saved one of the most difficult poems for last, and not difficult in the story of the poem, but difficult in the comparisons, because there's some interesting comparisons. So, very quickly, the simple story of this poem is what?
About a man who is leaving his love.
He is leaving his love. Yep. They're going to be apart for a while. And some people connect this to Donne's life because he left his wife for a while to go live in France. But it could be connected that way. It doesn't really matter, though, right? Because we're just going to talk about this man is leaving his girl, and he has some words to say to her before he goes. And essentially, what's the thesis? Our love will what?
Last forever.
Last forever,
No matter
right?
where we
Don't
go,
cry
like,
about it.
Yeah, don't cry. Don't cry about our being apart, right? Did we talk about what is a valediction?
Okay, so we like defined a bunch of things, like,
Except for that one. We defined a bunch of words except for that one.
A valediction is a strong farewell.
Yes, right? So in the title, it's a farewell, right? Colon, forbidding mourning. Talk to me about that.
It's to say don't cry about it because we're gonna get back together eventually.
Yes.
It's gonna end up all okay.
He's trying not to cry too because he's trying to stay strong through saying goodbye.
Yeah. So the whole message of the poem, the thesis is we're going to be apart. Don't cry about it. Don't mourn our being apart. And then he starts doing these interesting comparisons. So there is a kind of metaphor comparison going on in 3 and 4. There's one in 5 and 6, and then there's one in 7, 8, and 9. And because this is a metaphysical poem, these are strange comparisons. They're interesting comparisons, right? So let's talk about 3 and 4. What does John Donne compare their love to? What's the images that you get out of 3 and 4? What's the comparison?
He talks about nature a lot. I guess not as much in this stanza, but he talks about earth once and
Talks about earth, yes. Moving of the earth brings harms and fears.
He's kind of like comparing it to fear, just the essence of fear, like afraid that they're gonna be separate.
When the moving of the earth brings harms and fears.
Changing.
When does the earth move? During an earthquake, right? During an earthquake. So earthquakes frighten people. Men reckon what it did and meant, but trepidation of the spheres, though far greater, is innocent. What do we make it? What trepidation of the spheres?
What is trepidation?
What is trepidation?
A feeling of
fear
fear.
or an alarm.
Okay, a feeling of fear or alarm, right? Trepidation of the spheres. What is he talking about? Trepidation of the spheres.
I think he's talking about Earth, and I think he's talking about kind of like the solar system, how that doesn't really shake or move.
Exactly.
And it's very strong.
It has these patterns that it's going in, right? It has these orbits, right? And where it starts, it's going to come right back to where it ends.
So there's also kind of the sphere of intellect and the sphere of heaven and hell, or kind of more less physical spheres of existence of being. Maybe it's trepidation of the metaphysical world is kind of is what's changing as a result of this, but the greater far is innocent. It's innocent that these things aren't at fault for this.
Yeah. So stanza 3, he's talking about earthquakes scare people, right? When the earth moves, it's scary. But the earth is always moving, right? It's always turning, and it always is going in that orbit. And having that orbit is his image, right?
It's kind of like things always have to change, but sometimes change is scary. So
Sometimes change is scary, but sometimes change is not scary, right? Sometimes change is just coming back around in our cycle, right?
It's almost like he's preparing her for the worse. Like saying, like, this is going to change and this, like, everything may not be the same between us, but it happens.
Yeah. And even though it's not the same, we'll get back to where we were. So let's talk about 4 now. Dull sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense cannot admit absence because it doth remove those things which elemented it. I think the word that's interesting is sublunary, right? Because he talks about this grand image of the planets going in their orbits, right? And then we get dull sublunary lovers love. What's sublunary?
Belonging to this world as contrast with the better and more spiritual one.
Okay, yeah, it's below, right? We have these heavenly spheres, but we are below those, right?
When I looked it up, it said situated beneath the moon.
Exactly, because it has the word lunar in it, right?
Yeah.
Which refers to the moon. So, who are the dull sublunary lovers?
The 2 people involved.
The 2 people involved, the man and the woman, that are splitting up. Yeah. So they're being separated, and because they're going to be away from each other, he says that we are like heavenly bodies, right? We are like planets. We're going to come back around to it, right? We have this circular image, right? Which is interesting to compare your relationship with someone as an orbit in the planets, right?
So
That's
what
weird.
are they orbiting around? Like the sun is what planets orbit around.
Yeah.
Like what is the metaphor in that?
Love.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Okay.
Or the fact that they're going away, right? But they're going to come back. Because if the Earth starts here, it goes around, it's going to come back to that
I
point.
feel like if you know you're going to come back, why would you leave?
He has to leave.
But
Well,
why?
Yeah.
Can we bring it down to the metaphors in 7 and 8 and 9?
Let's do the metaphors in 5 and 6, and then we'll get there, right? So 5 and 6, but we by a love so much refined that ourselves know not what it is, interassured of the mind, careless, eyes, lips, and hands to miss. And then 6 is where we really get the image. Our 2 souls, therefore, which are one, though I must go, endure not yet a breach, but an expansion, like gold to airy thinness beat. There's the image, right? Talk to me about gold.
What he means right there is like gold, airy, thinness, beat. So when you beat gold, it's to thin it out and spread it. So what he's saying here is they're spreading their love, no matter how far away they are from each other, that distance will be enclosed with their love and their souls because they are one.
Yeah. And now, is this gold getting weaker as it's being beat apart?
No, it's expanding.
No,
It
its
is.
strength.
It's covering more, right? It's all encompassing. And he says we're not going to endure a breach. We're not going to endure a rip in the metal. It's just going to be larger and cover a greater amount of space, right? Which is an interesting metaphor as well, right? So far we have the orbits of the planets. We have gold being beat into a large sheet. Now let's get to the last image, right? So if they be 2, they are 2 so, as stiff twin compasses are 2. Talk to me about this compass. We have 2 types of compasses, right?
Yep.
What type of compass is this?
A stiff twin
Is it this kind of compass where you're like trying to figure out where north is? No, what type of compass is
It's
it?
the compass that draws
Yeah.
a circle.
It's the compass that draws a circle, right? That you use in math.
It's all about circles.
This guy is all
Yeah.
about circles.
Like-
Pam, talk to us about compasses in math.
So
What do we do?
So the 2 pieces, they're like fixed together, and no matter how far apart they are, they'll always be fixed at one point.
Exactly, yeah. So they always come together at one point, right? And then what is the other part of this image? He talks about,
They go full circle and then they meet back.
yeah,
where they start.
exactly, which connects us back up to,
The
3 and 4.
3 and 4.
yeah, where the
Orbits
orbits,
of the
right? So we're drawing an orbit again, right? Wherever.
I'd also like to say that when you use a compass, you can measure your circle getting bigger or smaller. So I think what he's also saying by this orbital thing is no matter how far we expand out, you're going to be the base because you're not going anywhere, but he's going to be the pencil that draws the circle. No matter how far he goes out, The starting point, which she started, will always be there.
Which then could also connect us back to 6, right? Where we're beating out this piece of metal, and it's just getting larger and larger. Lauren.
I wanted to just bring up that he wrote twin compasses, which makes me more think that he's relating each of them to compasses, drawing their own paths, maybe saying that they overlap.
Okay.
And I mean, you guys were going along the lines more of their relationship was one compass, and so
Sure.
how would you take the twin compasses into hand then?
Romel.
How would you
I
say
think
that?
he, like, in those two lines there, he says two a lot, like he uses repetition, and like saying that there'll always be two and there'll always be that number. It's not like it's just gonna be one of them at any time.
Like, it's just the two of them always together. There's no one else that he'd be with otherwise, which is why they're, what they're orbiting around with is why they will always come back together, because there's no one else there's no other planetary bodies that will pull them away.
Yeah. They're acting together. Good.
Like, there's no way that they couldn't come back together.
Mhm.
That's kind of what he's saying.
So would you say that they each are their own compass, or what? Or that the relationship is one intertwined compass?
I'd say
Okay, I'd say that they're each their own compass, because he says in stanza 6, that there's two souls. So he knows that they're both individuals, but he knows that they both crave each other enough to where they don't want to live without each other, and they are always going to have that bond. They're always going to be connected. Even though they have their differences and they're both like their own person, they're still one at heart.
I'd have to disagree with that. I say they are one compass, because in one compass you still have the two parts. You have the stationary part and the pencil that draws a circle. Two parts, but they both meet at one fixed point, which is what he's saying in 6. Our two souls, therefore, which are one. They're two separately, but they meet at one fixed point in the center. And I think that's what he's also saying down here.
Like he says,
if they be two, they are two so, as stiff twin compasses are two. There's two pieces in it, but they still meet at a fixed point.
yeah, like he says, thy soul, thy soul is the fixed foot. So like that's the part that's anchored in the center. He's kind of still orbiting. It makes no show to move, but doth if the other do. So like the other is moving. He's going around. She's staying back. She's waiting for him. He's going to come full circle, come back to her, even though they are 2 points on the same compass. And they're kind of like dancing with each other. They come back.
I just think that it wouldn't even be a compass if there were two, because it would just be like a stick.
Well, I was just confused with the word twin, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean like twin because it
Like
has
the
2
twin
points.
points.
Yeah.
I had the imagery of two compasses,
Which
like
is-
two separate
Yeah.
But
compasses.
they're like connected at the top.
I think that as Fernando was saying, having the two legs, that works better with the story of the poem, right? Because this woman is staying where she is from, right? The other person is going somewhere else, but is going to come back later. So I think that fits with the story.
I think it's kind of weird how he keeps saying that she'll always be there, because maybe she wants to change too, and so he's kind of saying like, well, you're gonna stay here, and kind of telling her that she's gonna
Not
stay there
giving her
while
an option.
Yeah.
he goes everywhere.
It's not a very
But at the same time, in stanza 7, he says, "Thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no show, but to move, but doth if the other do." So if one's moving, the other will move too.
So I
she
mean,
doesn't
we
always
have
to
to
stay.
think about time period as well. Like this was written a long time ago,
Yeah.
where women were not as liberated as they are today. So I mean, you have to take that into consideration as well. But this metaphysical poem is only difficult because of the strangeness of the images, right? Like we have these weird comparisons, and that's really what makes this a more difficult poem. But once you kind of understand the images, it really isn't that hard. It's pretty
pretty cool.
straightforward. Yeah. All right. Any last comments before we're done?
What about the last stanza? What is?
I think the last stanza, honestly, is just wrapping up the whole poem and with the whole circles.
Yep.
To say, "Such wilt thou be to me who must, like thy other foot obliquely run." So to slant-wise run, like in a circle, you're slanting this way. You're not running directly out. And the firmness makes my circle just and makes me end where I begun. So,
Okay,
like
yeah.
the whole poem, he's just going to end up back where he started eventually.
I think another thing about the orbits is they're not really completely circular. So sometimes they'll be closer than
Yeah.
like Sometimes they'll be
That
super
is a great
fun.
point. Good point. All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and
Like and
see you
subscribe.
live.
Like and subscribe.